What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does the day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi Campbell, a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, Birth Story, and owner of My Doula Heidi. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe that every one of them, and you, deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions and more. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories, share our feelings, and of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, I hope you will stick around and be part of this tribe. Episode 2. Grab a latte and get comfortable because I am interviewing my sister on the podcast today. And she is a crack up. And I just want to tell you that she had a 2-year-long fertility journey that led to an overdue baby and an induction. And in this episode, I'm not kidding, she calls her husband a Jedi master of orgasms. So I'm Heidi Campbell, host of the Birth Story podcast. Welcome, Samantha.
So first of all, I know we've been sisters. I'm like 46, and we've been sisters for a long time, but I don't go by Samantha. I'll just let you know that now. I go by
I'm
Sam.
sorry, everyone.
I go by Sam. So Sam, sis. All right.
I'm sorry, listeners. This is my sister, Sam. Wait, let's tell the listeners why I call you Samantha most of the time. Because I named my dog Sam.
After your ex-boyfriend, Sam.
Samson.
Right.
Samson.
So, yeah. So I guess I should think that's nice because you don't want me to be like your dog or something. I don't know. But I go by Sam. Sam is my name.
Okay. Hey, Sam.
Okay.
So let's talk about your pregnancy and getting pregnant because I want listeners to hear your story leading up to getting pregnant with Alessandro.
Okay. So Alessandro is my 13-year-old, and my husband and I had been trying for like 2 years to get pregnant, and we really wanted a baby. We had dated and lived together for like 5 years before we ever moved, before we got married.
You sinner.
yeah, kind of. But, we both come from broken homes, so we just want to make sure everything was like copacetic and was going to work. And so once we got married, then we started trying for a baby, and it took 2 years before I actually got pregnant with Alessandro. Now, we didn't like do the whole let's look at fertility and, measure all these different things. And we weren't like crazy about it. We just had sex when we wanted to have sex and we're hoping for the best. But I was really concerned. It was like worrying to me because I was like, I feel like my entire life that my body was like made to give birth to babies. And like, why was I not getting pregnant? Which I know I've had a lot of friends who have had similar circumstances too.
Real quick, how old were you?
So good question. If I'm 46 now and he's 13, what is that? Help me. 33?
So when you gave birth,
33.
So you were 30 to 32 when you were having,
Yep.
Either you or your husband, you were on a fertility journey though.
Yeah.
For 2 years in your early 30s.
Yes. And then we went on a trip to Germany. So we went on this really fun, fabulous trip to Germany, and we had an amazing time, and we were relaxed, and we were drinking a little bit, and all kinds of things, probably that you shouldn't be doing for getting pregnant. But we had this great time, and we were in the baths in Baden-Baden, and we believe that he was conceived in the town of Baden-Baden, where the baths are in Germany, because we were having a really good time there. So when we got back from the trip, I was pregnant. So I don't know if it was just a measure of being relaxed and he was relaxed and all the stars were aligned, but 2 years into our journey, then I was pregnant with Alessandro, and we were super happy about it. We, by the way, almost named him Baden.
I'm really glad that you didn't do that.
Which means bath.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, at least his name is Alessandro Chagall after a couple of different painters, correct?
Well, Alessandro, just so we could have a Hispanic name because my husband's Hispanic. And then Chagall is for a Russian Jewish painter that we love.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love the name. So one of the things that you've shared with me is that you, like when you learned you were pregnant, that you felt different. So tell me about what it was, like what happened to you with both of your pregnancies that kind of let you know that you were pregnant.
So I had never heard of this before from anybody, but when I was, when we were in Germany, we then went over to Belgium, and when we went to Belgium, we were staying in this really cute place with a little courtyard and cobblestone streets, and it was just like so romantic and fabulous. And, you know, it was time to go out and about in the town of Belgium and in the town of Belgium, but Belgium's not a town.
I swear she has a master's degree and she's really smart.
But we were about to go out and about. I don't even actually remember what town we were in. And I got a fever. I felt sick, and I said, I can't go out. So I've actually never seen Belgium besides our hotel. Because I just felt bad. I got in the bathtub. I got a fever. I felt sick. And lo and behold, when I got home, I was pregnant. So I just thought, oh, maybe that sickness coincided at the same time with, you know, conception. But then when I had my second child, Peyton, the same exact thing happened. Like I got a fever. I didn't feel well. I had to stay in bed. I just didn't feel quite right. Like that's the best way I can explain it. And again, that was my signal with her that I was pregnant, because I was like, oh, maybe this is the same thing that happened with Alessandro.
Cool. So how did your pregnancy go overall?
It was awesome. Like, it was amazing. I loved being pregnant. I loved Alessandro being in my belly. I loved seeing my belly grow. I loved feeling the little kicks of him. I wasn't really somebody who got sick. The only thing I was in the beginning part of my pregnancy mostly was like a little nauseous, where I just kind of had to have snacks everywhere. So I had like, you know, the little center console in your car. I had like nuts and, you know, just things that wouldn't spoil if I kept them in my car, crackers, that kind of thing. Because literally I'd be somewhere and I'd be like, if you don't give me something to stick in my mouth right now, it is not going to be good. So that was a weird feeling to me with pregnancy of you feel nauseous, but you feel like you need to eat something. Because every prior experience in my life, besides being pregnant, of feeling nauseous, of course you don't want to eat anything. But this nausea for pregnancy, I had to stick something in my mouth.
Okay, so you never had to take any medicine?
No. Mm-mm. No. So the pregnancy was great. I walked all the time. That was a big thing with me, is going walking in the woods. And there's this great place called Bent Creek that I still go walking, and I love it. And so I walked all through my pregnancy. Yeah.
Cool. So what happened as you got close to the end? Like, did you have a due date? Did you know? I mean, you said that you knew when maybe you got pregnant. So like, did you think that your due date was accurate?
I'm one of those people who doesn't really believe in due dates. I kind of just think, oh, your baby's coming around that period of time. But it was February. So Alessandro was to be due at the beginning couple weeks of February, and he ended up being born on February 23rd. So we were really hoping he would come on February 22nd, because that's my grandfather's birthday and my daddy Sam. So I thought that would be a really, really cool thing to happen. But he didn't. He came on the 23rd. But what else were you asking?
So on that light, you were overdue. So your due date was sometime in early February.
Yeah.
And so what was that like when kind of the due date came and went?
So going to my physician, who she's a wonderful, amazing person, she kept saying, you know, well, you're going over the due date, and usually we induce if you go over the due date. And I was like, oh, come on, give this baby just a little bit more time. So she gave the baby like another week, and then nothing happened. And I'll tell you a couple of things I did too. And then then 2 weeks, and she basically said 2 weeks is my limit. Like, you need to be induced. So after 2 weeks past the due date is when I had an appointment at 8 a.m. at the hospital to be induced with Pitocin to start some of the contractions that Pitocin just gets the contraction started. So I was really disappointed about that, and I tried everything I could for the 2 weeks prior to get Alessandro to come out. But he was very happy inside my belly, and I think he wanted to stay there for a very long time. And he didn't want to come out right then.
So what are some of the things that you did to try?
So my massage therapist, Isabel, was amazing. So I had massages all throughout pregnancy, and she gave amazing prenatal massages. And so she said, okay, this isn't going to feel like all those really nice other massages you've had. And it was like pressure points on my ankles where she dug in and just like kind of hurt you on your ankles. And those trigger points or pressure points are supposed to help with getting contractions started. Unfortunately, they did not for me. And I think I did that a couple times with her. And then I decided to go to acupuncture. So one of my best friends, her husband is a Chinese medicine doctor. And he's like, yeah, you should come for acupuncture. We do it all the time to induce labor. And apparently there's a lot of evidence that goes along with that. So I went in for that session. And I believe the majority of the needles they put were on my sacral area, on my back, and you definitely could feel like this sort of electric charge, down there, and I could feel the baby moving around a little bit more. Alessandro was moving around, but again, did not induce labor. And at that same Chinese medicine doctor office, the acupuncture, they're like, okay, try this tea. Are you willing to do anything? And I'm like, yes. And it was this tea that contained, I'm not shitting you, like a dried seahorse in it. And they're like, please drink this whole thing. And I'm like, drink the seahorse also? So yes, Alessandro, if you're listening to this, yes, mommy ate a seahorse for you and some gross, nasty tea that they described as driveway water runoff. Like, that's what it tasted like. Was disgusting. Like, you just went into a gutter and picked up some water. That's what this tea tasted like. Again, did not induce labor. So massage, acupressure points, acupuncture, gross tea. And then the last thing I did, which was completely disgusting and probably felt the most little kicks and contractions from it, but nothing like, again, ever happened, was I think it's called castor oil, right? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just like chugging castor oil like it was Jägermeister in college, like I'm just like chugging it, trying to get those contractions to come. And yeah, they did not come. So at that point.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt right there.
Okay.
As a birth doula.
Yes.
For anyone who's listening and wants to try castor oil, don't chug it like you were in college. 1 to 2 tablespoons of castor oil mixed up in like a smoothie or a milkshake. And I only recommend doing castor oil one time. When you do castor oil multiple times, you end up with diarrhea.
I wish I had you as my doula for the first baby because I didn't know that. Yeah, I was like, I had the bottle up to my mouth, like drinking castor oil. And Frank's like, are you sure you should do this? And I was willing.
So I have a question for you too, because one of the things that I want listeners to hear that's really important for natural induction is having sex, because there are so many prostaglandins in the semen.
Oh yeah.
That and having an orgasm where it like releases so much oxytocin that's a really good thing. Were you comfortable enough to have sex?
We had sex all the time.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
we had
so
sex
that
all the
didn't work
time.
either.
We had sex all the time. That did not work either.
And you kept walking?
What do you mean?
Like walking through Bent Creek or
Oh, yeah,
whatever?
yeah. I kept walking and having sex all the time. It did not work. And my husband is a Jedi master with orgasms. So that definitely didn't work. So
I hope everyone saw on the podcast that this is an explicit podcast.
Yes, sorry. We are sisters, and I do have a potty mouth sometimes. So no, none of that worked, but I tried everything. But again, I tried not to stress too much out about it. I just didn't. I think I was stressing out at the end there with all these things because I desperately did not want to be induced. I did not want to have Pitocin. I did not want to have anything injected in my body or the baby's body that could potentially be harmful in my mind, at least, like I just so desperately wanted to have this natural childbirth, right? And to me, I was like, oh, if I get Pitocin, then it's not a natural childbirth. But it ended up being fine. It ended up being okay.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because there's going to be so many people that are listening that go over their due date. They know that they have a deadline, that induction is a possibility. And so many people think the same thing that you think. And so, and this is just a side note here. Like, I was induced with both of my children as a birth doula, and my sister was also. And I had a really good experiences with an induction. So I want to maybe talk about like where that fear of Pitocin comes from. I've heard a lot of myths out there. And so kind of, do you remember what your perception, like why you were afraid?
Well, kind of my thing is I don't want any foreign substance in my body or the baby's body. I mean, I barely even take Advil or Tylenol as a regular person, not even being pregnant. So why would I want something in my veins shooting through me? And why would I want contractions that were not natural contractions in my own head? Like, I'd rather just have the contractions my body are going to give me. And I'll explain a little bit of that one in a second, because that was different. And then just the environment and setting of the hospital. I wanted to labor because I knew labor was going to be a long process. I'd rather labor more at home or in the woods than necessarily like sitting in a hospital bed hooked up to an IV. And if I'm not supposed to eat soft cheese with a baby inside my belly, I mean, it seems a little strange. I'd be pumping something into me through my veins that would be going to my baby. I mean, that's what I was thinking. So that's sort of where it came from. But to me, the biggest thing with the Pitocin is got to the hospital at like 8 a.m. and they stuck the, needle in my arm, got it going with an IV bag. And it took a while. Like, I was just like chatting in bed. I was like, when is this going to happen? Like, when are these going to come?
Back up for a second.
Okay.
What time did you check into the hospital for the induction?
So it's 8 a.m.
Oh,
8
you
a.m.
checked in at 8 a.m.
If you were listening, Heidi.
I missed the time. Of course.
Like,
this is the story of my life. I missed the time. So it was 8 o'clock in the morning.
That would be 8 a.m.
Okay, so that's really good, because the city that I'm in, a lot of the providers like to start inductions at night, and they bring the moms in at like 6 o'clock at night. And
that's horrible.
I know. I feel like it's really counterintuitive, because I feel like you need a good night's sleep and you need to be rested. So at another point, we'll bring in a local OBGYN and ask them why they start inductions at 6 p.m. at night.
Now, I didn't end up having him until like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. So I can see how it might help them out to like start it at night, and then maybe they're having a baby by the morning when they're coming on shift again and they've had a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
But I think it was really smart and good to start at 8 and do what we did.
And then go.
Yeah.
And then one of the things we missed here is that you hired a birth doula.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. This is a show about
Isabel. She really loves you. She just forgot about you.
Yeah. So Isabel was an integral part of this. So Isabel was friend, massage therapist that I've had for years, and she had never really done the doula thing before. I don't think she had really done it before, and she is just this amazing healing human being. She just knows so much about human anatomy and how to help you when you're in pain or need to relax with massages and all these things. And she had studied all of this cool fertility sort of medicine. In what country? You remember what country? Belize, yeah.
She worked with like a shaman woman in Belize to learn fertility massage.
Yeah, so it was really cool. So anyway, I just proposed to her. I said, how about being our doula? And I started off with some of my readings I had, and then she read up on her own about a lot of different things. And Frank was going to be at the hospital the whole time, but I knew he needed a support person too. Like, so the three of us kind of were a team at the hospital, and she knew it was an induction, and she brought like a whole bag full of stuff, and we had a thing of snacks and all kinds of things, but she was there with us through the entire process. And like I said, 8 a.m. and I didn't have him until after 2 a.m. I mean, they needed to have a break, and like have a burger and have a snack themselves and switch in and out of the room, like helping me sometimes and that sort of thing. So she was an amazing doula. That was my first experience with a doula. I would never suggest to anybody to not have a doula. Like, everybody should have a doula that's giving birth regardless, as part of your team. It's not like your only person. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what a doula is, but support person during birth. So she helped massage me. She talked to me. She helped keep me calm. She got mom out of the room when mom was driving me crazy. So that kind of thing. So.
Getting your mom out of the room sometimes is really important.
Right.
Our mom answered her cell phone while I was pushing my first child out.
Right.
So thank you, Isabel.
Yeah. So doulas can help with that. Yeah. I think, everybody was coming in my room, like plugging their cell phones in and stuff and bringing their chaos into my room. And Isabel was like, yeah, I think she's such a delicate, gentle person. Like, she's like, yeah, I think this would be really nice if y'all can push this out into the hallway somewhere, so she could do it, because you don't have the strength at that point to kind of be your own advocate. So the doula helps you do that.
Yeah. And I'm going to interject right here for any of our very savvy listeners that are like, but Heidi is a doula. So I was very young 13 years ago. And Isabel actually inspired me to become a doula after this
Not
experience.
me? It wasn't me?
No, you had something to do with it. I think you gave me a book like the doula book or something. But I probably like being competitive. Like, I was pissed that I didn't get to be your doula. So I was like, well, I'm definitely going to become one of these magical doulas so that I could be your doula on your next birth.
Right.
And so I was. So I was Sam's doula for her second birth.
For Peyton. She was an amazing doula for Peyton.
So, but Isabel, I just remember kind of being in the waiting room and thinking, whatever this mystical creature is doing in there, like, I want to be her,
Yeah.
I want to be healing, my sister.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like, now you correct me if I'm wrong, and I know this isn't me interviewing you, but I can't remember the answer to this question. Weren't you doing something around that time where you were helping people in hospice, or you were helping people with dying somehow, and then you were like, this connects in the other direction? I don't know. I just have this like memory of that in my head.
100% no.
Okay.
I don't even 100%.
Because you're like, oh, I want to be on the other side of it, on the birth side.
No. Okay. I mean, I was like a drug rep that was like helping people with their medicine. so maybe, but no.
Okay.
So I did have a few friends that were giving birth that I had like kind of helped through their, before I became a doula, like that I had helped. And so I thought I knew what I was doing, but without doula training, but
okay.
I did not know what I was doing back then. So back to your birth.
Okay.
So you check in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Isabel's got the room set up. Like, your husband's there. They get the IV started with the Pitocin. And then kind of what happens? Now we're going to take a short break to just share a few things with you. And we'll be right back with our guest. I'm so excited to tell you about my first book that I wrote that is launching this summer. It's a 42-week guide to your pregnancy. It's a collection of birth stories. It has a ton of doula advice from all of the questions that my clients have asked me over the last 14 years. It has hysterical partner tips that you will want to read to your partner. And it has journaling prompts, because nobody has time to write 20 pages in their journal about their pregnancy. So I've taken the liberty to give you some prompts of things that I think you might want to remember back on after the baby's born. So again, you can go to birthstory.com and pre-order a copy today, and it would mean the world to me. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I need your help to spread the word. If you know anyone who is pregnant, is trying to become pregnant, or just loves a good birth story, if you could send them to iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or SoundCloud, wherever they listen to their podcasts, and ask them to subscribe to the Birth Story podcast. So back to your birth.
Okay.
So you check in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Isabel's got the room set up. Like, your husband's there. They get the IV started with the Pitocin. And then kind of what happens?
Oh, I had let me set the scene for you. I put pictures of my grandmother and my grandfather on the windowsill,
Okay.
summoning their healing spirits because they had passed, and just there to help me through the labor process. You know, we had some good scents going on in the room. Isabel brought me some ice pops, you know, to have during labor, and then the contractions started. Eventually, it took a few hours. It wasn't like immediate. It took a few hours for the Pitocin to kick in, and they started messing with it, turning it up and down and everything. And after I've now had the 2 births, I can compare the differences between the natural contractions and Pitocin. And I think the really hard part about Pitocin is because they're having to adjust it to your body. They're a lot of times right on top of one another. So you'll have a contraction and then just one deep breath, and then another one starts. Whereas with natural contractions, you'll have a contraction, you know, you have the squeezing of the muscles, and then you have like 60 seconds usually, 30 seconds at least to like breathe, to calm down a little bit, and then go into the next one. So it gives you a little bit more space in between contractions. And again, maybe if they had just done the Pitocin a little bit differently, maybe there would have been more space, but that was a hard part for me. But I forgot to say it, I also toured the hospital ahead of time and had seen that they had birth chairs. Now, I think they had them shoved in some closet far away where they didn't really want to get them out for people. And they thought it was a little weird. I got the feeling. But I knew they were there because I had done the birth tour and I had asked those questions. So when we first got there, I asked if they would get the birth chair out of the closet. And one of the nurses looked at the other and said, birth chair? And then so that process of finding the birth chair probably took an hour or two, just FYI.
Yeah. So note to self, when you're touring the hospital and you see really cool things like a birthing ball or a peanut ball or a birth chair, like make sure you have in your birth plan or your doula or your partner or something knows, you know, what you want that environment or that room to look like. You don't have to worry about any of those things if you hire a doula.
Right.
Because they'll do it all for you. So for
and you know what? And that is a good point because Isabel was tracking all that down for me. So I didn't have to really mess with that. And I wasn't really having any contractions. I didn't need her yet, you know, and she was out in the hallway finding the birth chair for us.
Getting everything organized, you know. So for everyone that's listening that is like, what is a birth chair?
Oh, yeah. I guess we should
Okay. So there's going to be a lot of people that have no idea. So talk about like what a birth chair is.
Well, you may be able to talk about it better than I can, but I can describe it from my point of view. Is it kind of looked like an old person's walker,
Okay.
is what it looked like to me. And like with the little chair part, it had a very thin rim that you could sit down in your walker kind of thing. So I'm holding on to metal bars on the side, but I'm sitting. And it's kind of like a squat sit. It's like a low sit.
Yeah.
Because I had read that reduces your birth canal and makes it easier for the baby to come out. And I wanted everything that would make it easier. And so it had like a small rim. I would say it wasn't the most comfortable birth chair in the world, the one that they had. But at that point, it was great because it was support. I did not want to be in the bed. I did not want to be confined. And my husband was able to get in a chair behind me and kind of envelop me with like his arms and support my back and rub my back and that sort of thing, like while I was laboring.
Okay.
So would you describe it any differently or what you've seen?
Yeah, I would describe it as like a toilet seat that's not on a toilet.
Yeah.
So that still has like a hole in it. So it kind of lets
Maybe
gravity.
my butt just felt so big that it felt like it was like a 1 millimeter rim all around.
So,
I don't know.
But it just kind of helps, you know, with gravity. So everybody who's listening, so squat, 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 squat. Like we can't say it enough, right? Like sit in your chair, sit in your ball, but squat, 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 because it actually really does help to get the baby to move down, to get in a good position, to put pressure on that cervix, to open the cervix, to work with gravity. When you are laying flat on a bed on your back, labor just takes longer. So
yeah, and I would say the best way that I could explain this is if you're laying down, if you've got to shit, if you got to poop.
Okay.
Okay.
It's explicit.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you can say shit.
Okay. So if you've got to shit and somebody said, "Oh, you have to shit. Why don't you lay down in the bed to shit? Why don't you do that?"
Get on
Just
your
imagine laying in your bed on your back and then trying to shit. Of course, that makes no sense. Not that a baby is a shit, but it feels like that sometimes. So, like, it's much better to be like sitting, squatting, whatever, because then you're in a position that just, like you said,
Expels the
gravity. It makes more sense and it feels better.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, to me, archaic to like lay in a bed because that's not what is the easiest position.
So at this point in your labor, you're still all natural in the sense that the only medical intervention is a Pitocin drip.
Yes.
Right. And did you have an IV bag of fluids?
Yeah.
Too. So an IV bag of fluids and a Pitocin drip, and your husband is massaging you, and you're sitting in the birth chair. Isabel, I think, is massaging all over your whole body.
Yes.
Too. Talk to me about how what you were doing with your mind when the contractions hit.
Well, I was doing all these visualizations, and I forgot this part too. It's been so long. Hypnobirthing. I had gone to some hypnobirthing classes with a hypnotherapist, and there was like a trigger word that Frank and I came up with, and then he touched my shoulder at a certain point when he would see that I was struggling, and it was basically just a relaxation mode to get into. And so that would help me then relax even further. But in my mind, I just kind of had mantras in my head, like, I'm so excited to see Alessandro. I think I had one that was like, my flower of my birth canal is opening like a beautiful flower. So I kept just imagining like my vagina opening bigger and bigger to let the baby out. And I also just was breathing. I wasn't trying to struggle against the contractions, because I'm telling you, having a baby for the first time is a weird experience. And I was not prepared. I had read a million books. I am like a researcher. I had read everything. I could, every first person account, every medical thing. I read it all. But you still don't know what it's like until you actually go through it. And to me, it was like, birth is like peristalsis, like with a snake. And the snake is like doing those like contraction-y things to like get the food down, and so that to me it's like peristalsis, like the contractions to get your baby out. And if you like are trying to like push really hard, and it just doesn't work. You just have to give into it, give over to it, just like you do an orgasm, by the way, is just let go. It's like when you let go and you breathe and you give into the experience of this baby trying to crawl out of your body, which is a strange experience to think about, right? Then it just goes more easily. And then I think I told you this whole thing too of, like the whole taking the shit on the bed like thing and laying down. That doesn't make any sense. Now let's take taking a shit to the toilet, okay? If you're on the toilet and you are trying to poop, okay, and you're like, and you're trying to poop, it doesn't happen. You'll be there forever. Like, but if you just
breathe your poop out.
You breathe your poop out. You just breathe in and you breathe out. The poop will come out. Same thing with the baby. If you will just be calmer and actually give in to the experience and like breathe in and out, at least for me. I mean, I'm saying this like it works for everybody, but for me, that helped a lot.
So you had a really long labor, essentially.
Yes.
So if you started at 8 o'clock in the morning, you didn't deliver until 2 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Yeah, there were some altered states of consciousness going on.
Right. So you had mentioned that you didn't want to like put all these toxins or anything else in your body. So I'm assuming that you, in your mind, you were like, I'm definitely not getting an epidural, or were you open to getting an epidural?
Well, I did not want to have an epidural, but I was definitely open to whatever is going to keep this baby safe. I mean, if they would have come in and said, we need your right arm, we need to cut it off to make the baby safe, I'd be like, go for it. Take my arm. So I was kind of the attitude of whatever they think is going to keep the baby safe, keep Alessandro safe, I'm totally willing to do.
So you had a team you totally trusted.
Yeah. But I didn't want, and the doula, Isabel, helped with this. I didn't want to be constantly offered, because they kind of do this thing where they come into your room and offer you like epidurals and stuff or whatever. And Isabel was kind of like my defensive lineman, who would go up to them and be like, don't bring that stuff up to her right now.
Like she's doing
she's
great.
doing okay.
Yeah. So at what point do you think that things started to really intensify? Do you have a concept of the time frame?
I don't have a concept of the time frame, but they videoed everything for me, and that's another good reason to have some support people in the room. So Isabel and Frank videoed everything. So there's some crazy videos of me like, wah, like my head like going around, and I was making lots of deep moaning sounds. Like I don't even know if I could just like. That
sounds like a contraction.
Do you think your listeners would like that?
Yes. Actually, that does sound like a contraction.
So those deep sounds were like really helping. And I had done some prenatal yoga where they said that you making those deep sounds actually helps to open up.
Yeah. Wah.
Yeah.
Wah. That's a guttural, like opening sound that you'll hear a lot from laboring women.
Yeah. So, and so I knew that it was relaxing to me. It worked for me. And I had my eyes closed a lot during labor, and I was just in another world. I was in another place. But the touch of people really helped. The massaging helped for me during pregnancy, like pressure on my back, moving around, getting up and walking around the room. All of those things helped me.
Okay.
My least favorite thing would probably be the heart monitor that they put across your belly when you're in the middle of labor. At least for me, that was a pain in the booty because it felt so heavy and like restrictive and like annoying.
Did they constantly monitor you? Like that monitor was on and it never came off?
Well, I mean, not at 8 a.m.
Okay.
But when I was getting pretty heavy into the contractions, then it was on for hours and hours.
So while it can be annoying, I think it's really important to talk about the importance of that heart monitor, though. So especially when you have like the artificial Pitocin or any kind of medical intervention, they just want to make sure that the baby is doing okay. So they're looking for accelerations, decelerations, but that the baby's heart rate response to the contractions is doing okay. So did you find any comfort in that, like knowing that he was doing okay?
No, not at all, because it just scared me to death, because it was like a big seatbelt across my tummy, like as a stretchy seatbelt or tightening. Every time there was a contraction, there was a big device in the middle. And so all the time they're like, heart rate is decelerating, heart rate is decelerating. And they're like freaking out about stuff, which then freaks you out if nothing's going on really. And in my head, all I kept saying to myself was, Alessandro is fine. Of course, the heart rates are going to decelerate when I'm like pushing or, he's trying to get out of there. Yeah, it's a tough job to get out of somebody's vagina.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wasn't worried. And thank goodness Isabel and Frank are really like the most calm people in the world. So I wasn't worried, but I can see how for other people to like, it stressed me out a little bit that they were so concerned with it. And I just knew somehow in my head everything was fine.
Yeah.
But
so I hear when people don't see the decelerations, you'll hear moms that will say that, oh, I could look over and see that the baby was doing fine. And that was comforting to me. But because...
Does that happen where people give birth and like it doesn't decelerate at all?
Yeah. If they have quicker labors too.
Okay.
So that's a good note. We can step in right now and say that like when there is compression to the baby's head, you will, as the baby's coming through the birth canal, we will see heart decelerations. If the cord is wrapped at all, you'll see some decelerations. There are some many other reasons to have heart accelerations or decelerations, but as long as they're short and they bounce back, the medical community seems to not, they watch it. But they're not overly, concerned when you see a deceleration with a contraction when the baby's coming through the birth canal. That's typically considered to be pretty normal thing to witness on a heart rate strip. So you saw that with Alessandro. So as he was coming down, he was in the birth canal, the head was getting compressed. There was some heart decelerations, but you were not scared by those. So that was good.
No.
Like you just knew intuitively, like your baby was doing fine. And so talk about the birth. So
the birth part, was exciting. He has a nickname, Turtle, to this day, because he was like, out, no, I want to go back in, out, no, I want to go back in, with his little head. So I still call him Turtle. But so the thing that was a little bit hard is my physician, I think, had a hard night. That night of whatever was going on at the hospital. And
no, talk about it. I think it's important. Don't talk about her, but she had a tough night.
Yeah. So I was on the birth chair, and originally, I had a birth plan and everything, and she was totally fine with me giving birth on the birth chair, and she'd get down on the floor and deliver the baby. And we had talked all the way through, but it's now 2:30 in the morning, whatever. And she comes in the room and it's getting close. And she's just like, Sam, I've had a really hard night here at the hospital. I just want everything to be safe for you and Alessandro. I need you to get on the bed. So I will tell you that my contractions really, I swear to God, they did not hurt. Nothing hurt about labor. It was just weird, like a baby's crawling out of you, weird. Until I laid down on the bed. And then when I laid down on the bed, my back was killing me. My vagina, when he was coming out, I tore. That was horrible, whatever. But I really do fault it with laying down on the bed instead of being able to give birth on the birth chair. But later on, I found out that there was a young child, basically an 11-year-old that night, who had given birth. And I think she was my physician was part of that whole process. And so she had just had a, mentally and probably physically hard time and just wanted everything to be safe for me and Alessandro. And it was. She's an excellent physician. So, so pushing him out, it took a while to get him out. I kind of think of it as carving the Grand Canyon. Your first baby out is carving the Grand Canyon for the babies to come, the future babies. So the first one, man, it's a little harder for them. It was a little harder for Alessandro to get out of there and head to turn and shoulder and everything and get out. But he eventually did.
No episiotomy, but you tore naturally?
Yeah, tore naturally. And I wanted to because I had read up that tearing naturally and healing is actually better than having a straight line kind of scalpel cut. I just read that. So some research on that. So tore naturally, but I bled a bunch. So Alessandro comes out. I'm so excited. He's so cute.
And let's clarify.
Okay.
You didn't bleed from the tearing. You were bleeding from a postpartum hemorrhage.
I have no clue.
Okay.
I have no clue, but maybe
it's
I
more
know.
common since I don't know your
clue.
medical history. I'm going to guess you had a postpartum hemorrhage.
Okay.
Because let me just do a little doula teaching right here is when so just even if you didn't know this, is that your uterus is a muscle. And when we labor naturally, and you talked about we have those long breaks in between, so sometimes you'll be in labor and you'll have a 20-minute break in between contractions, even when you're really, far along. But that when we have Pitocin and it's just contraction, 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 and you had a 16-hour labor, something like that, that muscle is tired. So then after the baby is expelled from the uterus, that muscle needs to continue to contract in order to deliver the placenta, but also so that you don't continue to bleed and hemorrhage. And sometimes that muscle is worn out and is so tired. So someday I'll interview a medical professional on the statistics here, but it is very common, I would say. I hear stories, and I've had a lot of clients, myself included, where there was a postpartum hemorrhage because of a really tired muscle, the uterus, after giving birth.
So one of my nurses, this is kind of a funny story. One of my nurses was 7 or 8 months pregnant. I mean, she was huge. She had a huge belly and she was so sweet. So right after I gave birth to Alessandro, and they were working on him, all the nurses are doing the APGAR scores and seeing how healthy he is and stuff. They were like, we need you to go to the restroom. We need you to go to the bathroom or whatever. So I passed out. Because I had lost so much blood. And I said, I'm about to pass out. And she said, just lean into me. So I felt so bad. I'm like, I feel so bad. And then I passed out right on her belly, holding her. Yeah. She's just hold on to me. And I passed out on her belly and she's holding on to me. And then she's like, can you take a couple more steps to the toilet? And I took a couple more steps and I passed out again. And then when I got to the toilet, I passed out again. So I think and I kept just leaning into her big, beautiful belly. It was kind of beautiful, actually, nice. I felt bad though. And they gave me some sort of medicine, I think, to stop the bleeding of what was going on. But I forgot to tell you the other part of the story is with the 2 weeks of being overdue in their minds, right? One of the things my doctor said is your placenta can calcify, and that could be bad because you're not getting nutrients to your baby and all that kind of thing. So as soon as the placenta came out after Alessandro, I was like, show me that placenta, because I was taking the placentas home anyway. And I was like, show me that placenta and show me those calcifications. So the doctor, she held it up to me and showed me, and there were these like little white spots. They look like white spots on there. And she's like, it's not a ton, but there are white spots on here showing calcification of the placenta, which is apparently not a good thing.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons apparently that they induce.
Yep. So I think some of the listeners that may be listening are like, to go back to the beginning, like being afraid of an induction or like not wanting to have an induction. But here is Sam telling this amazing story that said the placenta is calcified. There was an urgency maybe to have had this induction, and you still had a completely natural childbirth. Like you never got the epidural. No. You never had any other medical interventions besides that Pitocin and IV drip, even with a really long, labor. So tell us, how much did Alessandro weigh?
Okay, I really should have looked at this before I came for the interview, but I want to say he was like 6 pounds, like 12 ounces, something like that. He was right in that range.
Yeah. So, I mean,
he was tiny.
Most standards, I was like, that it's a pretty tiny baby. So I think 7.
My belly was enormous, though. I was like, are there other babies in there? Because I swear this baby was going to be huge.
We have short torsos in our family. So, so yes. So you had a big belly, but it's because you have a short torso.
I was like, darn it, I've gained 50 pounds, but this guy's only 6'12". What am I going to do?
So you gained 50 pounds too. So healthy, normal. Sometimes they say 25 to 30 for those people listening. I'm sure I'm going to say it over and over again. I gained 70 pounds. I don't necessarily recommend it because it's really hard to get it off afterwards, but it happens.
Yeah, I'm still trying, and my child's 13.
So it happens, So let's talk about just those like moments like right after a birth. Like, so because it was natural, did you get a chance to like hold him right away and nurse right away? Like, how did that go?
Oh, yeah. So exciting. So did skin-to-skin contact right away, and had him up on my belly at first. And then Frank got to cut the cord, too. So that was really cool. And they waited for the cord to, like, pulse out everything. And he was just so cute. And I couldn't believe he came out of me. Yeah. And this little love and the, like, love in your heart for this human being. Like, how did a human being come out of the inside of me, and how can I love this human being like more than life itself? And it was just overwhelming. But I just kept looking at Frank and then looking at Alessandro and like, oh my gosh, look what we did. Like, look what our love did. Like, that is just insane to me, that like you can love someone so much that you can create a life from your love. I mean, it's a pretty profound experience. Yep, nursed right away. APGAR score was good. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, he was a great little healthy little thing, and
a beautiful birth.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to ask moms is like, did you have a favorite product that you used when you were pregnant or after pregnant, or like when that you registered for that you got, but do you have a favorite baby product?
I would not say any particular baby product, but the store Target has always been my saving grace. And ladies listening out there who are pregnant or about to give birth or have given birth, they open at 8 a.m. That is key. Most places are not open at 8 a.m. And I'm talking like every day they're open at 8 a.m. So I just would have to get out of the house. So I would bring the baby with me, and it was a place to go, and I'd get like some Starbucks and be walking around with my chai tea and my baby, and it gave me a place indoors that was safe. Didn't matter what the weather was, to just walk around and look at things and figure out what products I needed. Because let me tell you, I needed stuff all the time. So at Target, I'm like, oh, it's pretty in here. It's clean. Oh, here's some clothes for the baby. Here's some cream that I need for my nipples. Like, here's like
they have it all.
They have it all. Like everything you need, and this calm because no one's there at 8 a.m. So it's a really easy place, and to go in the morning. So that's what
Sam's favorite baby product was all of Target.
All of Target and Starbucks. I'm telling you, they saved my life.
Do you still go to Target and Starbucks?
Yes, I still, on Saturday and Sunday, it's just my routine. I go walk in the woods for like an hour, and then I go to Target in the morning to see what I need, and I have my Starbucks. Yep, it's my routine.
Awesome. Okay. Well, for anyone listening that loves Sam and wants to hear about her second birth, we're going to have a part 2 where she talks about her birth.
Where Heidi was my doula.
Where I was her doula. Yay. And she had an all-natural childbirth with Peyton. So look for that episode, and I will put it in this episode's notes. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, Sam, for being on and telling us your story.
You're awesome. I love you.
Love you, too. Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan and prepare for the birth you want, no matter what that looks